Hey everybody, welcome back to the SpinCycle. We're here with another episode. Today's episode is going to be all about tariffs. Stand by. Donald Trump has been saying on the campaign trail before he got elected that tariffs on China were a tax on China. That's false. Tariffs are an old way of collecting revenue for the United States. Okay, guys, so when we think about tariffs, we think about three reasons that a government will implement tariffs. We call it the 3 R's in economics: revenue, restriction, and retaliation. So first of all, the simplest one is revenue. Back in the late 1700s, early 1800s, the United States government had no way of collecting revenue. There was no income tax then or anything, and it would be really hard to collect income tax because it wasn't like now where people worked a job and they got a check and it could just be taken out of the check. You would have to get everybody to pay income tax, and the country was people were so spread out around the country and a small amount of people. So the most efficient way to collect revenue was to tax imported goods, tariffs. So if you wanted to send tea, for example, to the US, when that ship came into port, the tax officer would just go and collect the tax before they could unload the imported goods. So that was simple, but also the US economy back then was really simple. So that's the most simple way, revenue, just to collect revenue. Tariffs, I believe, each year bring in, a couple $1 billion in revenue, and the country spends trillions of dollars each year. So the tariff system we had now just wouldn't work. It would have to be drastically overhauled to make enough money to support the amount of money the country spends. And as you all know, we already spend more than we take in. That's why we have, a trillion, I think it's $30 trillion in debt right now. And Trump added 8 trillion to that. Biden added 6 trillion to that, so you get the point. So the second part of tariffs is restriction. So later on in the country, in the 1930s, the Smoot-Hawley Act was a new tariff on everything that came into the country. And that tariff was so harsh that it exasperated the Great Depression in the 1930s. And eventually it was overturned. And that was just a blanket tariff on everything that came into the country. So that was the restriction part of tariffs. With the Smoot-Hawley Act, the government, saw that a lot of things were coming into the country. A lot of stuff was made in the country, but a lot of stuff came from overseas, and sometimes it costs less actually than it be made in the country. So they were basically trying to restrict the amount of goods that come in from another country. And then the last R is what Trump's trying to do. He's trying to use tariffs to force Mexico to close the border and force China to stop sending illegal fentanyl into our country, which are good aspirations, but most economists believe that tariffs are not going to work for that. For one, I don't think Mexico has control over our border. They couldn't close it if they wanted to. And China's illegal fentanyl industry is not controlled by the government. The government could probably do something about it, but tariffing China is not going to work. It's more likely that China and Mexico will just smack a tariff back on us, and then you're in a tariff war, right? And the people that will be hurt mostly by that are the American taxpayers, because this is the way a tariff works, right? If you buy an iPhone from Apple, that iPhone's designed in California, but it's assembled in China, so it has to be shipped over here. The whole assembled iPhone has to be shipped over here, and then when it gets to the border to come into the country, say it's a 20% tax. The 20% tax is paid by Apple, who's importing the phone into the country, and then more than likely, Apple will pass that tax on to the consumer. Apple could probably afford it, but most countries can't afford to pay the tax and not pass it on to the consumer. So if there was a 20% tax on China, iPhones are about $1,000 right now. So add 20% onto that, and that's how much tax you're paying on the tariff for your iPhone. So after the Smoot-Hawley Act was overturned in the 1940s, all countries decided that they were going to work together on tariffs, and this was the beginning of cooperation with tariffs and also the formation of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And that's what the World Trade Organization is, a place where all countries get together and they figure out how they're going to import and export goods into one another's countries respectively. But what Trump wants to do is he's basically using that third R to retaliate against countries for things they have done and things that he imagines they do that they don't have any control over. So if you've been following the news, the other day Trump put Canada and Mexico on notice, telling them that he's going to put a 25% tax on Canada if they can't control the fentanyl coming into the country. And I don't think Canada has any control over that. It doesn't come in legally. It comes in illegally smuggled. The American government is the one who has to, the TSA or the Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland Security, the ones that have to control that coming into the country. I mean, Canada could help, and they are helping. It's so easy to smuggle fentanyl that we're having a very hard time controlling that from coming in the country. And he also threatened a 25% tax on Mexico, saying that they have to close the border and that Mexico has to close the border and control the fentanyl and all drugs coming into the country and stop illegal people from coming into the country. So he said that, and then a couple days later, he got a response from Gloria Sheinbaum Pardo, is the new president of Mexico, and she said, okay, if you're going to do that, we're going to throw a tariff back on you of 25%, and then boom, you're in a trade war. After Trump's call with Gloria Sheinbaum Pardo, Trump said, just had a wonderful conversation with the new president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo. She had agreed to stop migration through Mexico and into the United States, effectively closing our southern border. We also talked about what can be done to stop the massive drug inflow into the United States and also U.S. consumption of these drugs. It was a very productive conversation. And that turned out to be a total fabrication, because then Gloria Sheinbaum got right back on the internet and said that what Trump just said on Truth Social was a total lie, that their conversation was not about that. She didn't completely fold to him. She told him she was going to implement a 25% tariff on the United States if he implemented a 25% tariff on Mexico. So Trump just basically lied about it again, like he always does. So what do economists say about Trump's first trade war? See, we have some context here. Trump put tariffs on China his first term in office, and China retaliated with tariffs of their own. And what came of that? Economists have had years now, 4 years, to study what was the effect of the Trump tariffs on China. So this is what economists say overall. By and large, American importers and to a lesser extent American consumers paid for the tariffs set during Trump's first term. According to research from Feigelbaum, Cavello, and others, so peer-reviewed research, looking at the impact on goods such as washing machines, solar panels, aluminum, and steel, Cavello and his co-authors found that U.S. tariffs focused on differentiated Chinese goods that were hard to replace. So Chinese exporters kept prices steady. He says as a result, U.S. importers ended up paying more for goods from China and passed some of that cost along to consumers. The effects varied across different kinds of consumer goods. However, the tariffs on washing machines had a quick pass-through into consumer prices because they were large, 20%, because the tariffs were large, 20% initially and targeted, says Cavello. But other goods prices that received tariffs of 10% took much longer to increase and only did so when the tariffs were increased to 25%. So basically what they're saying is tariffs are a tax on us, the U.S. consumer. That's why right now, I don't know, Joe Madden or John Madden, whatever it is, handbags, which are all made in China, they're already hiking up their prices. Walmart is already hiking up their prices or planning on hiking up their prices because all their, the majority of their stuff comes from China. So There you have it. Tariffs are a tax on you, the consumer. If you weren't smart enough to go look that up before the presidential election, that's on you. American voters, you need to do your homework. It's disappointing how many voters in America didn't actually look at Trump's policies and they just looked at the bloating rhetoric and how manly he is. I don't know how he gets the mantra of manly, a guy who wears a wig and paints himself orange every day with a spray tan. But anyway, like, subscribe, comment below what you think about tariffs. And if you voted for Trump and you thought that tariffs were a tax on China or a tax on the country that's sending the goods to the US, comment below. I want to hear what you have to say. Subscribe, comment, share. Thank you. This channel is a brand new channel. I'm just starting out. Thanks for your support.